What is up, all my viewers and fantasy football degenerates? I'm Owen, and welcome back to another episode of First Round Bye. It's been a minute, been really busy, still training for world championships, and I've been short on time, but I'm getting ready to leave for a training camp. So I'm hoping that I can get more of these videos popped out when it's just going to be nothing but training and getting as many videos out as I can for you guys. Today, on this episode, I'm going to be going over my 2026 league winners. I'm going to give you 5 players that you should try to not leave your drafts without. So sit back, watch the video, and we'll get right into this. First on this list, and it shouldn't be any surprise, I've been high on this offense all offseason, and it's going to be Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's another year in the Cohen system. Should help him start off a little faster. Started off slow last year, and I just think it was taking him some time to learn the Cohen offense. He's got multiple weapons: BTJ, Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Brenton Strange, who just signed a big deal. And the thing is we're all going back and forth wondering, is it BTJ? Is it Parker Washington? Who do we draft, as far as the wide receivers? When it comes down to it, when we're having that problem, why not just draft the quarterback with all those weapons? From, I believe it was the last 8 games, so essentially from week 11 on, he had 5 rushing touchdowns. He was 3rd in expected fantasy points and 5th in EPA per dropback. He had 24.4 points per game, which was more than Josh Allen. So he was the QB1 essentially from the last 8 games from week 11 on. And those last 8 games, he was 1st in EPA per play, 1st in EPA per dropback, 2nd in EPA per rush, 4th in completion percentage, 4th in yards with 2,009 yards, only behind, the top offenses, the top quarterbacks as far as passing, which is Goff, Stafford, Dak, and 2nd in passing touchdowns with 19. So as you can see, Trevor Lawrence was really cooking the second half of the season, and I think he can just continue right into this season. 5 rushing touchdowns. He had 9 total on the season. And here's the thing is, what if, I'm really high on Bashal Tutin, and I think the offense is really going to be cooking. But what if Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez aren't as efficient in the red zone as Cohen would like him to be? Who's to say that Trevor Lawrence doesn't get to 8, 9, 10, even 10 rushing touchdowns this year? And maybe he even takes a step forward this year, without the slow start, and he's looking at possibly 30 to 35 touchdowns. That's the thing with quarterbacks. I'm looking for the quarterback one, and I don't mean a quarterback one as in 1 through 12. I mean the quarterback one. Last year, it was a hit with Drake May. I think I was drafting him around the 10th, 11th round, finishes quarterback 2. This year, you got Trevor Lawrence going around that 7th and 8th round. So it kind of falls into my strategy this year of a later round quarterback. I'm not going early on quarterback this year. And if you can hit on Trevor Lawrence in your 7th or 8th round in your 2026 fantasy football drafts, I think it is going to be a league winner for us. He has that potential to finish as the QB1 or even top 3. He is my QB6 in my rankings. So I am kind of hedging that bet of maybe not quite as high as QB1, but QB6 is really high from what I've seen across the industry. Most have him around QB9. I believe ECR is around QB9, QB10. I have him as my QB6. And I just really think coming into this year, it's going to be more comfortable with the offense. Cohen is, his offenses are really well ran. They're going to be high scoring. And Cohen just had, 2 years ago, had Baker at 40 passing touchdowns. I do think Trevor Lawrence now, it was a 5th-year breakout. It took him a while to break out, but same with Baker Mayfield. And I think if Baker Mayfield has an upside to throw 40 touchdowns, I think we could see Trevor Lawrence getting to that 35 mark. And if he can do that and then put alongside his rushing game and get, 500 yards rushing with 8 to 10 rushing touchdowns, you're looking at a QB1 there. And I just refuse to leave any of my drafts without trying to get Trevor Lawrence. And if I have to take him a little early because I'm at the end, I'm at the turn, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to take Trevor Lawrence wherever I can get him. So, first player I'm looking as a league winner is Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think you guys should really do your best to like get him in every draft you can. That's what I'm going to be doing. And I think it's going to pay dividends at the end of this year. Second player that I have on my list as a league winner, and this is going to be a surprise because it's a really controversial player, but it's Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens. I've been going back and forth like crazy on, X and the internet and YouTube about the potential of Zay Flowers. You're either on board or you're not. He continues to improve every year. He's had 1,000 yards every year since he's come into the league, and he just continues to grow in this offense and grow as a receiver. He's an elite route runner, and I just see him. Everybody's looking for this year's JSN, and this is a bold take, but if I had to pinpoint this year's JSN, it's Zay Flowers. He has no competition whatsoever on the team. They drafted 2 rookies, and they're not going to get in the way of Zay Flowers. You have Mark Andrews still around there, just got an extension. But what happens? Let's say Mark Andrews regresses slightly, and he's not the red zone machine that he has been for his whole career. Or Derrick Henry regresses slightly. Where do those touchdowns come from? And everybody always talking about his touchdowns. Zay Flowers doesn't get touchdowns. We've all heard it. I believe he has 4, 5, and 6 touchdowns in his first 3 years. And here's the thing. What happens if Mark Andrews is less efficient? What happens if Derrick Henry takes a step back? I mean, it's King Henry, but he is 32 years old, and he could Father Time, like they say, is undefeated. And what happens if they take a step back? I mean, there's a non-zero chance that the new red zone target is Zay Flowers. His route running is elite. He can get open. And honestly, he's my call for the JSN, the 2026 JSN. The Ravens run 12 personnel at the 6th highest rate in the league, 13 personnel at the 11th highest rate in the league, and 21 personnel at the 4th highest rate in the league. So that adds up to 70% of the time they only have 2 wide receivers on the field, and one of those wide receivers all the time is going to be Zay Flowers, which is great for Zay. It was the same thing in Seattle with JSN and their heavy 12 and 13 personnel. JSN was always on the field, and when you're on the field in those 12 and 13 personnel packages, you're not competing against very much. You're competing against a tight end, your wide receiver 2, and your wide receiver 1, and a running back. And so the competition, and maybe the tight end 2, like the tight end 2, when that's all you have to compete against, the guy you're looking at a lot is the wide receiver 1. And Zay Flowers, we all know Zay Flowers can get open. Now you have Declan Doyle, who's come over as the OC and was the OC for the Bears in 2025. And he ran a heavy play action while he was in Chicago with the Bears. Maybe the Ravens increased that play action percentage from last year. And surprisingly, Lamar likes to work from the gun, but he is great when actually he's playing from play action. They actually had the 5th highest EPA when in play action in the league. So if they do increase that play action, I think it'll actually just really help things out for Zay to get him open, get those better looks for him. And honestly, we can see an increased target share for him and increased catches this year. And which will just naturally boost up his yards. Here's where I'm kind of going to make a comparison that is super bold, but just hear me out here. It's a good one, at least I think. Okay, so Antonio Brown was like a fantasy football GOAT, wide receiver 1 multiple years and just killed for our fantasy teams. Now hear me out. The first 3 years Antonio Brown was in the league, he didn't score touchdowns. And they're very similar players, Antonio Brown and Zay Flowers. Antonio Brown was 5'10", 181 pounds, ran a 4.56 40. Zay Flowers, 5'9", 182 pounds, slightly quicker with a 4.42. Now listen to these stats for Antonio Brown. 2011, 74 receptions, 1178 in yards, 2 touchdowns, 2.52 yards per route run. Yards after catch per reception, 5.0. 2012, 68 receptions, 787 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1.8 yards per route run. Yards after catch per reception, 6.0. 2014, here's the big year. 138 receptions, 1,815 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2.63 yards per route run. 2015, 143 receptions, 1,953 yards, 10 touchdowns, 2.91 yards per route run. 2016, 124 receptions, 1,593 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2.39 yards per route run. 2017, 108 receptions, 1,665 yards, 11 touchdowns, 2.84 yards per route run. So as you see, Antonio Brown just kept getting better. And his first few years in the league, he did not catch touchdowns. His touchdowns were around where Zay Flowers is. And, I'm pretty sure we didn't think that Antonio Brown was going to just blow up and be this red zone machine, especially at his size. But he was an elite route runner. And I think that's what we could do for Zay. Zay, rookie year, 77 receptions, 858 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1.64 yards per route run. 2024, 74 receptions, 1,059 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2.25 yards per route run. 2025, his breakout year, 86 receptions, 1,211 yards, 5 touchdowns, 2.53 yards per route run. And the difference between Antonio Brown and Zay Flowers is he is a missed tackles force machine. He had 16 missed tackles forced last year, and he honestly has, when you look at strength of schedule for wide receivers, he has one of the best wide receiver schedules for 2025 projected from 2025 matchups. So honestly, you have an elite route runner, an elite receiver in my eyes, with a very easy schedule for wide receivers. This is going to be Zay Flowers' breakout, and I have him as my wide receiver 10, which is really high. He's consensus around wide receiver 22, wide receiver 20, depends on what site you're looking at. But if you're looking for this year's JSN in 2026, my bet is Zay Flowers. You can keep receipts. Of course, we'll have these videos, and we are going to go over them after 2026. I think it'll be a cool thing to go back and look at some of the takes I had and see where I was right, where I was wrong, and how we could get better for 2027. But and this is like my main league winner that I have been calling this since just after the 2025 season, that Zay Flowers is elite and he's going to take an even bigger step in 2026. This is the guy you guys want as far as receivers. Right now, he's going in around the third, late third, early fourth. I'm grabbing him in the third all day. And if I can get 2 elite running backs in my first 2 rounds and then come out with Zay Flowers in the third round, I'm a happy man to start my drafts. And I think you guys should kind of go for the same thing too, depending on where it falls, of course. But if you can start that way, you're going to be happy with your drafts at the end of your drafts in 2026. Next player we have coming up, and this is going to be a sketchy one because he's coming off of injury, but it's going to be Cam Skattebo of the New York Giants. Cam Skattebo had a gruesome injury last year. I believe it was a fractured fibula, a dislocated ankle, and it was bad enough to where the fibula was actually protruding through the skin. It's like a compound fracture, I believe. I'm not a doctor, so don't quote me on that, but I do know that it was coming through the skin. So he had a really gruesome injury. But honestly, when Cam Scatterboo is doing backflips at charity baseball events and he's already participating in 11 on 11s at OTAs, these are good signs towards his health for the upcoming 2026 season, especially when we have running backs like Bucky Irving, who's coming off of a shoulder injury and a shoulder surgery, and he wasn't, really in OTAs till the end. And I do not think he was participating in 11 on 11s. So it's a good sign for Cam Scatterboo this year. I mean, everything that the Giants are telling us is telling us that they want to lean heavy on the run. You got Greg Roman coming in and John Harbaugh is the new coach. We both know what they did in Baltimore with just a heavy run scheme, run the ball, have a good defense. That's kind of like what they've always modeled their teams after. Fullback can't even talk. Fullback Patrick Ricard is coming in. You have their first round pick at pick 10, rookie Francis Mauigoa. He's great at run blocking and pass blocking, and he continues to improve. The coaching hire leans towards heavy 12, 13 personnel, which is kind of leaning towards wanting to run the ball, like I said, quite a bit. And when healthy, last year, Cam Scatterboo was RB9 in points per game with 16 points per game. He was 14th in yards after contact per run and 6th in yards per out run with 1.54 yards per out run, which is elite for a running back. That was even, I believe that was above Kenneth Gainwell in yards per out run. He had a 53% red zone carry percentage and was on pace for 48 carries inside the 20. He was 11th in carries inside the 10 at 59% and on pace for 26 carries inside the 10. And he was 6th in carries inside the 5 at 71.4%, on pace for 20 carries inside the 5, which would have been top 5. And if you look at adjusted points per game, which is kind of like a metric, if you look at adjusted points per game, it's kind of like a metric where it takes in account like when he was in the game. So if he only played a couple snaps and wasn't in the game, that doesn't really count. It kind of goes by quarters. So if you look at adjusted points per game, he would have been at 17 points per game, which would have been 7th in the NFL for fantasy running back. So he was really around the running back 7 as far as adjusted points per game. This is the list of the top 12 adjusted points per game backs that were around him. You had CMC, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan, Achane, Cook, then Scat, Henry, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, Kyren Williams, then Javonte Williams. So you can see just with the company he's in that Cam is an elite back. I really think he's an elite back. Can we see him get off to a slow start because he's not quite healthy? He's not 100%. Yes. Maybe the first 4 games, there's a ramp up period. Maybe he shares the backfield a little more than we want with Tyrone Tracy. But we've already heard rumblings from John Harbaugh that he thinks Cam Scatterboo is an elite runner. So when you have your coach talking you up, saying that you're an elite runner, you're an elite running back in the NFL, this is good for us. And anywhere I can get Cam, I'm trying to do it. I've said this, but my strategy this year is to lean heavy running back in the first 5 rounds. Cam is going around round 4. That's where I'm eyeballing Cam. Right now I have Cam as my running back 18. I believe it could be running back 16. I'd have to go back to my rankings, but I'm very high on him. I have him above Kyren Williams. I have him above Josh Jacobs. And I think he has the potential to finish as a top 10 running back this year in fantasy points. All barring health, if he gets hurt again, this is going to just completely throw this out the window, and it's going to be one of those things where kind of, shame on me, because just how Cam likes to run the ball. He's a battering ram. He enjoys the contact. As a matter of fact, when you watch him, he's kind of inviting the contact instead of just getting out of bounds when he's kind of got as many yards as he can. But look, if this guy can stay healthy, he's going to be elite this year. I have no doubts in my mind, especially with everything going on. You have Malik Neighbors still hurt. They're going to have limited weapons, and I think they're going to lean heavy on the known weapons they have. Who knows what happens with Likely? You know, he was brought in from John Harbaugh personally, but what did he do in Baltimore? John Harbaugh had Likely for years, and yes, there were spurts where he would lean into Likely, but honestly, we've never seen a breakout from Likely. So where do those touchdowns come from once they get in the red zone? I think they come from Cam Skattebo, and I think he has 12, 15 touchdown upside as long as he can stay healthy. Not to mention, he is elite, back out of the backfield catching, and you can see a 50, 60 reception season from him. If all these things come together, the ceiling for Cam is really, really high. And I truly believe that he's going to be one of the breakouts that we're going to come back to this video, and it's going to be one of the wins for me this year. So anywhere you can, go and grab, old the Scat Pack, grab him in all your drafts. And if I were you, just try to tell your friends, home leagues, talk Skattebo down. So everyone's trying to, lean away from him because of the injury. Do whatever you can to get your league mates to think that Cam Skattebo is not the pick in 2026, and scoop him up and pull a fast one on your homies and your home leagues, and just get Cam Skattebo wherever you can. You're not going to regret it. Next player up, and we're starting to see a pattern here in who I'm picking. And as I say it out loud, it makes me even more nervous. But the other player I'm targeting as a league winner this year is Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. Right now, he's my tight end 5, but I have him 9 spots above ECR. In 8 games, he had 32 receptions, 489 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He was second in yards per route run in that span, 2.33 yards per route run. Tied for 8th in the league in touchdowns, despite only playing 8 games last year. So 8th in the league in touchdowns, despite only playing 8 games. He's an elite red zone machine. He was 6th in receiving grade for out of all tight ends, and 1st in the league in yards after contact per reception. I mean, he's elite in yards after contact per reception. I think it was around 10.3 yards after contact per reception. And in my eyes, he's the new age George Kittle. Like, closest thing to George Kittle. George Kittle's getting old, and he's kind of stepping to the side and making way for Tucker Kraft in my eyes. Tucker Kraft also had the highest passer rating for the quarterback when targeted out of all tight ends. And here's a little stat to give you an idea of how much of a yak monster Tucker Kraft is. He was 39th out of 49 qualified tight ends with an ADOT of 4.6 yards, but with his number 1 yards after catch per reception, it put him at, I think, 15 yards per catch. So when you add those two together, it's just, the dude is elite. With the consolidated target share that they also have now, you got Dobbs leaving, you have Dontavian Wicks leaving. I think the consolidated target share is just going to help Tucker Kraft. I don't think they would let those guys go if they didn't think Tucker Kraft was going to be completely healthy at the beginning of the season, and all signs are pointing for him to be ready for week 1. We'll know coming into training camp, but if he comes into training camp and he's able to get some training camp in and get a few weeks of training camp in, it's going to be full go for Tucker Kraft. And I really feel like he's going to be, 100% healthy coming off the ACL tear that he sustained in week 8 last year. I mean, look at we got George Kittle, who I believe sustained his injury in week 16, and that was an Achilles. And George Kittle's talking about he's going to be ready for week 1. I don't think he's going to be playing week 1, but if George Kittle could be coming back from Achilles, which is way worse than an ACL, I think Tucker Kraft is going to be ready for week 1. I think he can get up to at least a 20% target share with I believe it was around 117 vacated targets. So some of those are going to go to Tucker Kraft. Last year, he was at about an 18% target share, and I think he can get above 20%. If he gets to that 21, 22% target share, this guy is going to be a smash in our drafts this year. Basically, for me, I think the whole offense is going to run through Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, and Christian Watson. And when it comes down to the red zone, as far as the passing game, Tucker Kraft is their guy, as you can see with how many touchdowns he had in his first 8 games last year. We've always liked Matt LaFleur and his offenses. And again, like I said, Tucker Kraft is going to be a beast in the red zone. He was the main target in the red zone. He had a 31.6% share of the team's red zone targets last year. And I had the number wrong. It was not 117 vacated targets. It's 131 vacated targets. So last year, if you add it up, he was on pace for 64 receptions, just under 1,000 yards, receiving yards, and 12 touchdowns. If we can see an elevated catches and targets, you could get him into that 90, 100 targets. It's easy to see him come away with 70, 75 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and that, 8 to 12 touchdown range. And if he does that, we're going to be looking at a top 3 tight end. And if we could hit that where he's going, which is around the 5th round, sometimes I've even seen him drop to the 6th and 7th round, depending on your leagues. If you can smash that in the 5th through 7th round for your teams, that is going to be the way to go. And I'm going to be eyeballing him in every draft I come into. I'm hoping he falls some because of the injury scare and everything like that. And I'm hoping that some of my league mates or some of your league mates are, scared of that injury. But if reports start coming out that he is, coming into training camp healthy, he's participating in training camp, he doesn't have a non-contact jersey, if he looks good, he's running fast, he's cutting well. If he's doing that, he's going to climb up in the ECR, and I could see him probably jumping up into the early 5th round, late 4th round once we get into August. And at that cost, I'm still taking Tucker Kraft because last year I think he was on pace. McBride had his huge breakout, but I think he could have easily been the tight end 2 in 2025. And I think we're looking at a chance for him to do that again and be a top 3 tight end. Right now, he's my tight end 5. Just kind of, hedging my bets on, what happens, whether he starts off a little slow in the season. But he is a guy that I want to target. I want you guys to target. And this is why I'm just kind of pushing it on you that if you can get away with Tucker Kraft in your leagues at round 5 and he comes up and you're in round 5 and that's the pick, take Tucker Kraft. You won't regret it. This last player is going to be really controversial because he did not have the best rookie season. His metrics were not great. And honestly, he was on a bottom 5 offense with a bottom 3 offensive line. But a running back that I refuse to leave the first round without, especially if I'm in that pick 7 to 12 range, is Ashton Jeanty of the Las Vegas Raiders. All right, let's get the bad stuff out of the way. Let's talk about last year. Again, their O-line ranked 30th in run blocking, so he didn't really have much to work with last year, and he averaged 3.7 yards per carry. So there's the bad, but he still got us 1,300 yards from scrimmage and RB11 in PPR. And here's the thing is, yes, he played every game, so I think he was more around RB14 in points per game, but he did play every game, stayed healthy, so he finished with a RB11 finish in PPR. We only really got to see him break out twice and have big games twice against the Browns and the Houston Texans, which honestly are both great defenses, with Houston being an elite defense. But he had some big breakout runs, explosive runs in those games, which made for huge games for us. Honestly, and here's the stat that kind of got you like through the season, you might have heard, but at one point he had more yards, uh, more yak than true yards. So he had more yards after the carry than he actually had in true yards. But here's the thing. We got Clint Kubiak coming in, out with the old, in with the new. Clint Kubiak, we think he's an elite coach. He helped the Seattle Seahawks last year in their run game and helped them to a Super Bowl. And one thing Clint Kubiak does, his main scheme is outside zone run schemes. Jeanty was great on outside zone run schemes. And if you could get him to the outside, that's where his big explosive plays can come. His broken tackle rate was 30%, which was the third highest in the last 2 years. Number one and number two for the broken tackle rate for the last 2 years was Bijan Robinson in 24 and Bijan Robinson in 25. So with that, we know he's elite. All right, let's talk about a few additions that are going to help this Jeanty league-winning breakout and why I picked him. We all know Kolton Miller's coming back from a leg injury last year, as well as them adding Tyler Linderbaum to the largest center contract in NFL history. Tyler is a great run blocker, ranked fourth in run blocking per PFF last year. And Kolton Miller, he's a little better at pass blocking than run blocking, but together they should, fortify that line and make it much better than last year. Last year, it being a bottom three offensive line. If we could just get it to the middle of the pack, I really think it'll help Jeanty out a ton with his running. Also, what else I think could be a factor is last year, Kirk Cousins checked down at the 11th highest rate out of 42 qualified quarterbacks in the NFL last year. So if we can get those dump off passes to Ashton Jeanty and just kind of get him going in the passing game, I think it could really, even elevate him from last year and the receptions he had last year. If we could get him into that, 50 to 60 receptions, maybe even higher, just because that offense is going to run through either Bowers or Jeanty. Even if we have Fernando Mendoza coming in later in the year, they're really going to want to get that run game going. That way, they don't put too much on the rookie's plate. So the best way to do that is get that run game going, take some pressure off of Fernando Mendoza. So that could also help, kind of help Ashton Jeanty just continue to break out regardless who the quarterback is behind center. Okay, and here's another interesting stat about Ashton Jeanty. Out of 115 qualified running backs, he ranked 115th in yards before contact. But this is where it gets very interesting. When Ashton Jeanty had at least 1 yard before contact, he averaged 6.78 yards per carry, which was just behind Bijan Robinson at 6.8 yards per carry. On those carries where he got at least 1 yard before contact, he had the same missed tackle rate as Bijan. He had the same missed tackles forced as Bijan. And here's where he was actually better than Bijan. He had 3.4 yards after contact per rush on those carries of at least 1 yard before contact, while Bijan only had 2.8 yards after contact per carry, which was that 3.4 yards after contact per rush was best in the NFL for Ashton Jeanty. So this shows us that Ashton Jeanty just needs a little space to work, and if he gets that little bit of space, he can really be one of the best backs in the NFL. And we're hoping that with the offense being a little better, there's no way they can be worse than last year. The offensive line should be better than last year. I just don't see how they get worse. Adding, with the key additions they made. And also, Ashton Jeanty is their main red zone target as far as like how they try to punch it in once they get into the red zone. They didn't have a bunch of red zone trips last year. Hopefully it increases this year, but he was first of percentage of team carries inside the 5, first in percentage of team carries inside the 10, and he was second in percentage of team carries inside the 20, only behind Jonathan Taylor. Excuse me. So, and another stat, he also was sixth in the NFL in target share at 14%, 14.7% target share as far as running backs, which was sixth in the NFL, like I said, which is only behind CMC, Bijan, Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs, Kenneth Gainwell, and then sixth was Ashton Jeanty. So all the metrics are there. Everything is there showing us that Ashton Jeanty could be one of the elite backs in this league. And I think this is a year that he shows us that he can do that. And I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. If the offense is just middle of the pack, this RB3 ranking could even be too low, and he could be one of the top 2 backs this year in the league. He does have a very difficult running back schedule as far as defenses, but we've seen him go off against the Houston Texans last year, so we know he's capable of doing it. He's capable of, having those explosive runs, and that's all we need. A couple things to fall our way, and Ashton Jeanty is going to be a smash this season. All right, everyone, that's it for today's video, and those are going to be my league winners for this year. I want to appreciate you guys for stopping by, checking out the video, do all that YouTube stuff, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and also hit that bell icon so you can be notified as when I drop a new video. If you guys want access to my top 150 player rankings for this year, completely free, the link is down below. Hit that email and just comment rankings, and I'll send them right over to you. As well as you can find me on X. Link is down below. Again, sorry for the delay. I'm training for world championships as well right now, so things have been quite hectic in my life, but getting ready to leave for training camp, where the whole focus is going to be just training and studying, getting out more content for you guys, and trying to get you guys the best content, the best player takes I can for the 2026 season. So stay tuned. Let's go get that first round bye, you guys, and come back for the next episode where we continue to just try and get you guys that first round bye and smash your 2026 fantasy football drafts. And I'll see you on the next one.